In World War II, Hitler unsuccessfully challenged the British in Iraq by making contact with King Ghazi ibn Faisal, who had grown opposed to the British. The king responded favourably, but when Britain discovered his relationship with the Germans, it arranged for him to be killed in a car accident. His young son, Faisal II, became king. The British appointed his uncle Abdullah, a loyal British subject, as Prince Regent and Crown Prince.
From the towering mosque in Baghdad comes the Regent of Iraq after Friday prayers. He is Regent for the 7-year-old King Faisal II, grandson of Faisal, the first king. They take great care of this little monarch when he visits the camp of Britain's Empire Army.
Nuri Said was appointed Prime Minister.
The official inauguration of the Zubair oil field was recently performed by the Prime Minister of Iraq, Nuri Pasha Said, in the presence of British, American and Iraqi spectators. Many benefits to the country are expected.
In 1941, Germany repeated its attempt to take Iraq from the British, this time by supporting Rashid Ali al-Kilani, who actually succeeded in taking authority on March 2, 1941. Kilani immediately declared war against Britain, taking side with Germany. However, Hitler could not supply him with the necessary land troops and only some German air squadrons. Britain, frightened by the occurrence of this sudden coup and the danger posed by the access of the Germans to Iraqi oil fields, quickly moved to overthrow Kilani by advancing speedily to Baghdad and occupying it. Kilani fled the country, and Abdullah was restored to the throne in the interests of Britain.
The revolt in Iraq was inspired by Germany. Its leader was the quisling Rashid Ali, but the vast majority of the Iraqis remain loyal to their king and their treaty obligations with the British. Bottles containing identification papers have been placed on the graves of Iraqi rebels who died in the revolt. Wherever the influence of Nazism extends, death follows swiftly.
Although Iraqi resistance against the British did not cease during the entire period of colonialism, British control over Iraq was only able to continue over this long period due to the stooge government of Abdullah and Nuri Said, and through the classic British policy of divide and rule, inciting division between the various factions within Iraq. Following World War II, America entered the region as a new player in the struggle over Iraq in order to compete with Britain over controlling the oil. America had since 1920 demanded from Britain her share in the oil of the Gulf. Britain, being the leading state at the time, unequivocally rejected the American demand. At the end of World War II, the American President Roosevelt dispatched a presidential committee to the Middle East to visit Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, Bahrain and Qatar. On return, it submitted a report that began with the following statement: "The oil of the Middle East is the greatest treasure that nature has left in history, and the economic and political influence of this treasure will be serious." Subsequently, when the US Secretary of State asked President Roosevelt, "President, what is the share of the oil of the Middle East that we must control?" Roosevelt replied, "Not less than 100%. One of America's delegates, based abroad, wrote to Roosevelt, stating, "The Middle East is a huge world galaxy of oil fields that has no parallel in the world. Saudi Arabia is the sun of this galaxy, for it is the biggest oil well in the Middle East. Its conditions are suitable, for its king, Abdulaziz Al Saud, wants two things: money and protection of the throne. The USA must guarantee these two things." This matter was later arranged between King Abdulaziz and Roosevelt in a meeting on an American warship in the Suez Canal, and so America won the oil of Saudi Arabia in accordance with a treaty between the king and the company of Aramco. Although Britain reluctantly conceded to America the oil of Saudi Arabia and part of the oil in Iran, it did not give up the oil of Iraq and continued to safeguard Iraq as its main base in the region. In order to protect its position, in 1955 Britain formed the Baghdad Pact between Iraq, Turkey, Iran and Pakistan and put all of them under its control. America planned to break the British hegemony over Iraq by instigating a military coup, like it did in Egypt on behalf of its agent, Gamal Abdel Nasser, against Egypt's King Farouk.
Cairo, 1954. Egyptians hear Colonel Nasser speaking of the future Arab empire, from the Persian Gulf to the Atlantic.
In Iraq, a movement of free military officers was organized under the leadership of Abdul Karim Qasim and Abdul Salam Arif, based on the model of the movement of free officers in Egypt. The coup was successful, and in 1958 they overthrew the monarchy in Iraq and established a republic.
Without warning, revolution has swept away the young King Faisal of Iraq and his uncle Crown Prince Abdul Ilah. Iraq becomes #1 danger spot. Veteran Premier Nouri Es-Said is deposed, he has fled, and the Republican rebels have offered £10,000 for his arrest. The tide of Arab nationalism is again in flood.
Abdullah and Nouri were publicly slaughtered. The new republic system in Iraq immediately set about removing itself from the military, political and economic stranglehold of Britain by withdrawing from the Baghdad Pact and the Sterling. Then in 1961 it passed a new Iraqi law that put most of the foreign oil companies under Iraqi state control. However, the leaders of the coup were divided towards Abdel Nasser. Abdul Salam was considered loyal to Nasser and preferred Iraq to join Egypt and Syria in the United Arab Republic. However, Qasim was against this. Abdul Salam therefore renounced Qasim and looked for an opportunity to remove him, but it was Qasim who removed Arif from the government instead, arresting him and putting him on trial. Towards the last years of his rule, Qasim set about working with the communists and strengthened their position in Iraq. This further rallied America and Britain against him. Nasser therefore strongly attacked him and his communist allies, accusing them of being agents to Moscow and of abandoning Arab nationalism. Nasser even supported some revolutionary movements against Qasim, but they all failed. Eventually the Baathists and the nationalists united to overthrow Qasim in 1959 and assassinate him. Abdel Nasser supported them by financing the assassination operation, but this attempt also failed. However, political forces increasingly continued to rally against Qasim, backed by America, Britain and the oil companies. Then in 1963, the Ba'ath Party and the National Forces led by Abdul Salam, with the backing of Nasser, conducted a successful but violent coup that led to the killing of Qasim and the elimination and torture of the communists. The coup was led by Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr, loyal to the English, and Abdul Salam, a nationalist supported by America and Nasser. And because there was split in loyalty between America and Britain, it was inevitable that a dispute would eventually occur between them.
Baghdad has taken on an appearance of surface quiet, but the city still seethes. The stability of the new government is questionable in restless Iraq.
On the 13th of April 1966, Abdul Salam died in a plane crash, and his brother, Abdul Rahman Arif, was appointed president of Iraq. America played a large role in his appointment, but he was weak in character and political matters in Iraq became unstable, with political influence fluctuating between the British and the Americans. It finally settled in favour of the British by way of another coup in 1968, when the Baathists, loyal to the British led by al-Bakr and his deputy Saddam Hussein, took the reins of power. 10 years later, al-Bakr was forced to step down and concede authority to his powerful deputy Saddam Hussein, who managed to rally the Ba'ath and security forces behind him. Saddam promptly set about destroying all the political and military opposition within Iraq.
أكبر من أن تقام. أحلام المتآمرين كثيرة ولكن ثقوا إنه واحد منكم يقاتل بتفنقه مو برشاشة سنة دون أن يسلم. كان يلوم على بعضنا